Okay, this is a review of a book that I have just received in the mail that I got printed from Artifact Uprising. It's the first book like this I've had printed by them or by any company, and I just thought I would give some first impressions. First, I really liked the process of making the book originally. It was very easy. You could do it online. When it arrives, I ordered 4. They come in a sort of plastic protection seal, which is good if you want to send them out to people. The first thing I noticed was that the text wasn't centered in the cover. So this distance here and this distance here are out by about 5 millimeters. And I'm sure you can probably notice that as well from the screen. I don't know if that was an error that I made when I was putting the book together, or whether it has something to do with not taking into account the fold or something like that. But it's kind of irritating. It was the first thing that popped out. When you first see a book, it's the first thing you notice, and it instantly jumped out to me as being off center. Especially because I designed it in a way so that you could sort of triangulate from there to there, and it would join up with the text. And you notice that also a little bit in the way that the print spreads are, where I've gone for a very symmetrical, repetitive layout. And so you could notice that, and I centered the images with equal margins left and right, and you can notice that the margin is much more visible on this side here than it is on this side because of the what's taken up in the spine. You can see here there's about that much is taken up by the way the book is bound together. Now, that's just something that I think is worth knowing for next time. So if you want to do such a rigorous sort of standard repetitive layout as I've chosen to do, you can take into account for that, let's say 5 millimeters extra that you're going to want to buffer. It's particularly noticeable. I mean, it's not. Yeah, to be honest, it is noticeable, and it's maybe noticeable in these sort of blank spreads like that. But I don't think that is an error on their behalf. It's just something to note for me in the future. Being a paperback, it's got interestingly, this came out centered, so that's centered left and right. And one thing I like about Artifact Uprising is you can take out their logo if you want by just putting a white JPEG, like a blank white JPEG file over top of their logo, and then you can put your own text over top of that. And they tell you how to do that on their website. So it helps make the book look more sort of personal and mass-produced. I also had a bit of text in the book at the very back, and that came out quite nicely, although it's kind of irritating that I've got this extra piece of a word hanging out there. If I was doing it in InDesign, I probably would have noticed that and taken care of it by squishing the text together and moving it up to the line before. I don't know if they have the possibility of doing that on the Artifact Uprising uploading page, but in general I think the quality of the book is really nice. The cover is just a sort of more eggshell white as opposed to the white of the paper, which is I think a really beautiful detail. The paper is really nice. When I first looked at it, I thought, oh, it's not super sharp, but then when I compared it to this photo book here, which is one of my favorites, and that has a you can see I've used a sort of similar layout. When I look at these photographs in detail, it's pretty comparable. I have to be, it's maybe a bit muddier and a little bit not as crisp. But I mean, given that. This has more the quality and the feel of a really sort of nice magazine this, and the paper has a sort of more sort of matte magazine quality than say a glossy photo book. I know with their hardcover books, I think you can choose a more glossy paper, but to be honest, I like this more low-tech look. And in terms of color, the color is printing very close to, the color looks great to me. It looks exactly like it did on the screen, and it's very nice. So I think for next time, also the size of the book is, like when I compare it to, say, this one here, it's maybe a little small. They have a book that I think is maybe that large, which might be a better option. But this also is nice as a sort of like more just like it suits the subject matter, which is really just a series of holiday photos. So they're printing out at like roughly the size of 35mm postcard prints, which I like. And I'm not sure what else I can say really. I think the main thing I would do next time is allow for the margins better by adding 5mm, and I would make sure that this text is going to sit in the center, and that I can control I could do a better job controlling the text. But in general, I'm very happy and look forward to printing more in the future.